Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new episode of Blureel Studios. On this episode, we're going to talk about some of the latest additions to the family. I promised in the last episode I would do a movie review, a genuine film review, the first on this channel, and I am planning on keeping my promise. I am in the works. You know, this review is in the works. This will be coming up very soon. I'm still shooting it and in the process of editing it. I want to get this first one just right. And like I said, if you want to know which film I'm reviewing, it's still on the screen right now. So which film could it possibly be? But first, before we dive into the latest additions to the family, we gotta roll the intro. Roll the intro! On this episode, we're going to talk about 2 Steelbooks and some Blu-rays that have joined the family. And to switch things up for this episode, we're going to start off with a 4K Blu-ray that has recently come to my doorstep. Ghostbusters Afterlife. This is the German 4K, which means it's not called Ghostbusters Afterlife, it's called Ghostbusters Legacy. Now, this film came after the failed attempt of rebooting the franchise, which we all know was a gigantic fiasco. If you're trying to make a comedy which isn't funny, then you have failed in making a new movie. And what the best thing I can say about Ghostbusters Afterlife, it's that it's pretty funny. The problem with it is it's a genuinely good film. It's not great, it's not fantastic, but it is very solid. But it's a weird sequel to Ghostbusters. Because Ghostbusters 1 and 2, especially the first one, the comedy in those films was very cynical. It's a very cynical film. Both of them are. This film is not that cynical. It kind of builds on nostalgia. It gives you warm, cuddly feelings as well. And I like this film well enough. I had a great time watching it in theaters, but the ending is kind of iffy for me. If you don't know, well, they bring back a character in full CGI, and it's a Rogue One situation. And you either hate that, or you're fine with it. I am still on the fence. I think it's all in execution. And in this film, the execution or the scene itself is heartfelt and it tries to pay respects, but it's still, in my opinion, far too in your face about it. That's just me. Twitter reacted to this moment very positively. You make of that moment as you will. I liked it well enough to buy it on 4K. Didn't pay full price. It was priced down, and that's why I picked it up. I didn't go for a Steelbook, which also tells you something about what I feel about the film. Layer Cake, directed by Matthew Vaughn, director of Kingsman and Kingsman 2 and all those fantastic films. The producer of Snatch is on this, and Lock, Stock, and Smoke and Barrels. I have this film for some time now, but I forgot to talk about it in the previous episode, so I'm showcasing it here. Cop Shop is up next, starring Jared Butler and Frank Grillo. I can genuinely say this film is pretty fantastic. The biggest issue with the film is that it outreaches its ambition, or ambition outreaches its budget, let's say. There are some fire effects that don't really work. The setup for this film is quite simple. Frank Grillo is a man on the run from the mob, let's say. He has angered the wrong people, and Jared Butler is a hitman ordered to kill him. Frank Grillo lets himself get locked up in a prison, and Jared Butler does the same. And hilarity ensues. Not really hilarity, but this film is pretty well written. It's directed by Joe Carnahan, who directed The Grey, a film I really enjoy, and also starring Frank Grillo. But what I take away from this film is that it's pretty well written, fantastically acted, And I think it's Alexis Louder who is genuinely fantastic in this film. She is the female officer in charge of protecting her prisoner from a hitman, and she's trying to do the right thing while this police station is getting besieged by hitmen. I love this film quite a bit. I actually really enjoyed it. It's well written, it's fast paced. The direction in the film is fantastic. The biggest issue I have with the film is the special effects. The budget constraints are noticeable when you really don't want them to be noticeable, and unfortunately, they are noticeable at times. With, specifically the fire effects are kind of bad in this film. Other than that, performance-wise, writing-wise, I think this is a very solid film, and a film you should definitely check out. Underwater is a film that I've been wanting to see for some time now. This film wasn't reviewed all that spectacularly well. It had a weird release situation concerning, delays, and it was scrapped at one point from what I understand. It used to be a 20th Century Fox film, and with the purchase of Fox by Disney, some things kind of got screwed up, and including the release of Underwater. And I'm still fascinated by this movie. I really want to see it, especially concerning the ending. I'm a big monster guy, so having a underwater film with a monster, I'm already sold. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, the third installment in the Conjuring franchise, universe, whatever you want to say. To me, it's just The Conjuring and some bad films surrounding it to call it a universe. But The Conjuring 3, it was directed by the director of The Curse of La Llorona, so I wasn't expecting greatness from this film, and what I got was mediocre. The best thing about this film are Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson as the Warrens, who continue to impress. But the story is really weird. If you want to sell these movies as based on a true story, that's all fun and dandy when it's concerning a family who's being haunted, let's say. If you want to sell that as a true story, sure, whatever. Nothing really harmful about that, especially in the first and the second film. The biggest issue you might have with the second film is that it's trying to vindicate a family who maybe put on a gigantic hoax, let's say. Nothing really terrible. But in this movie, they go a step further, and the Warrens come to the rescue of a man convicted of murder. And the defense is, well, he was possessed by a demon, supposedly. If you don't believe that, you're watching a movie about two real people portrayed as heroes who come to the rescue of a murderer. The film leaves no ambiguity as to where its morality lies, so you're like, okay, the Warrens are legit defending a murderer, and this only works if you believe in demonic possession, which is a steep hill to climb, in my opinion. And what I was intrigued by is that they sold this movie as the case where demonic possession was used as a defense, and I'm like, oh, that's freaking interesting. We're gonna get like a courtroom drama. No, not at all. It's a mediocre, run-of-the-mill horror film with, at the center of it, two fantastic characters portrayed wonderfully by Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. And yet still there's some issues I have with that film as well, because at one point Ed is possessed by a demon and is trying to kill his wife. And if this is a true story, then Ed tried to kill his wife at some point in real life. There shouldn't be this much ethical issues or questions to be posed about a Conjuring movie. And yet, here we are. Last Night in Soho is a film that I've been wanting to see for some time now, because Edgar Wright is one of my favorite directors working at the moment. Baby Driver was fantastic. The Cornetto trilogy is iconic. iconic for a freaking reason. His work on Ant-Man made that film so much better than it could have been in the hands of a different director. Let's say Ant-Man and the Wasp. I don't know. But this film has been on my radar for some time, and I didn't get to see it in theaters with the COVID pandemic and what have you. But now I have it on Blu-ray, so I am very excited to finally dive into a brand new Edgar Wright film. So it's written and directed by Edgar Wright. Ryan Reynolds was on a freaking roll recently, with The Adam Project on Netflix being a genuinely fantastic film. I really enjoyed that movie, and Free Guy was such a surprisingly fun movie. It is the Reddit film to make, an NPC movie, and it got memed a bit because, okay, it's like, let's make a Reddit film. But genuinely, I was surprised by how much I liked it. It's a fun movie. It's like GTA Online, the film, basically. And it's legitimately a lot of fun. And sometimes that is enough. Up next, we have Cash Struck, directed by Guy Ritchie. I hate this title because the actual title of the film is Wrath of Man, which I like so much more than Cash Struck. This is like a John Travolta Redbox movie title. Cash Struck. It's such a stupid title because the original title, Wrath of Man, is so much more fitting for this story. It's not just a robbery film, you know, like let's rob some cash trucks. There's so much more going on. And Wrath of Man, the title of the original title, actually is a reference to some of the themes of this film, which are freaking important. I can really recommend this film. I think Jason Statham is fantastic in it. The action scenes are solid. There is a solid momentum driving the film forward, and I really did enjoy it. I saw it in theaters with my cousin, and I loved it. The Last Duel, directed by Ridley Scott, starring Matt Damon, Adam Driver, Ben Affleck, and Jodie Comer. A film that I didn't get to see in theaters, and like many others, didn't see in theaters. This film kind of flopped at the box office, and the consensus is that it's a legitimately fantastic film. So it's a Ridley Scott directed film starring a stellar cast, and it was co-written by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. So I am really excited to see this one. And Ridley Scott has made some fantastic period pieces like Gladiator, Robin Hood. It's whatever, but still, you know. To top off this episode of Blureel Studios, I have two steelbooks to talk about. One of which is a 4K steelbook, and one of which is a regular as one-disc Blu-ray steelbook. Go figure. Let's start off with the 4K steelbook. The Northman, directed by Robert Eggers, the 4K steelbook in the plastic. Fantastic design for a great film. Not perfect, not brilliant like The Lighthouse was, or The Witch even. This film, let's kind of go into it a little bit. I loved my time with the film. I had such a great time. The film is visually spectacular. The direction is outstanding at some points. The Berserker scene is phenomenal. All the ritual sequences are so vivid and memorable, and they opt to go for an original Nordic language, which enhances those sequences. The performances are stellar. Anya Taylor-Joy is one of my favorite actresses, and Skarsgård is really, really, really good in the film. Some major issues I have, though. What keeps the film from being a masterpiece, in my opinion, is, first of all, the chemistry between Anya Taylor-Joy and Skarsgård. It's not really there. And so much of the film and its themes hinges on you buying their connection, their chemistry, and it's just not there, unfortunately. It just doesn't work, and there's a romance that develops, and I at least didn't buy it at all, and unfortunately, especially the third act really hinges on that relationship working for you as an audience member, and for me it didn't, and unfortunately that kind of took me out of it. Also, the film has a major revelation that it drops on you in the third act of the film. And it's in a fantastic scene with wonderful performances, great writing, and just stellar direction. Unfortunately, to me, it wasn't a surprise. And the film really wants you to be shocked and surprised. And I saw this twist or this revelation coming when I saw the trailer. And it's one shot in the trailer. One freaking shot. One little moment. And I was like, oh, this is giving me this kind of vibe. This is telling me the story is going to pan out like this. Then I saw the film, and in the first 15 minutes, that suspicion was confirmed immediately. When I saw that shot again in the full film and what happened after, I immediately knew this is what's going to happen with this character, let's say. And unfortunately, that kind of took away from that impactful scene, which was still wonderfully performed, wonderfully written, wonderfully directed. But that impact it needed to have wasn't there for me because I saw it coming. For some reason, I kind of connected the dots, which was surprising to me, let's say. And I kind of saw it coming from the beginning of the film. I saw it coming when I saw the trailer, before I even saw the movie. And that trailer is fantastic. It doesn't give away anything really, but yet that one little shot of a character turning around. Let's give you another hint. One specific character turning around and having a look. I immediately knew, like, okay, this is gonna turn out to be this and this and this, and I, unfortunately for the enjoyment of the film, I was right. And also, there was a moment which I don't like that much, and it's where Skarsgård has to hide after a failed assassination attempt of his target, and he's hiding on top of a roof. And he's hiding because they're kind of looking for him, or they're in the neighborhood. The dudes who are looking for him, and they're pretty close. And then he just starts talking to himself out loud, and he's talking to his sword, like in the vein of, you're gonna taste blood, sword of mine, and you're gonna be my instrument of revenge, and yada yada yada. And it's all very wonderfully performed, and it's all lofty dialogue, but he's just sitting there on top of a roof, talking to himself out loud while he's hiding. And I'm like, okay, he's talking to us, the audience. And then all of a sudden, I'm completely out of the experience. I'm out of the film. I'm out of this world. And I'm realizing that I'm sitting in the movie theater because this dude is talking to me personally. So to make sure that I'm following along with what's happening. Which I was, because I have eyeballs and I'm watching the movie. And now you're reminding me that I'm watching a movie. And that's so unfortunate because, again, stellar performances, some wonderful direction, some incredible cinematography, some very creative imagery. And I love so much about this film, and what I'm disappointed by is that I didn't love it more, because the film really tried to not make me love it wholesale, unfortunately. A long-winded review to say that the Northman is pretty great, but not fantastic. It's not Robert Eggers' best, but it does have a solid Steelbook, which I do enjoy a lot. To top off this episode of Blureel Studios, let's talk about one more Steelbook that has joined the family. Thank God. And that's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Directed by Sam Raimi, of all people. Sam Raimi back to directing a superhero film. After the original Spider-Man trilogy, I am happy to say that Sam Raimi still has the chops to direct a fantastic film on a visual standpoint. Unfortunately, this film wasn't mind-blowingly awesome. It was pretty great. I really like it a lot, especially on repeat watching. I enjoyed it quite a bit, but what kind of hurt the film is all of the hype and rumors before it was released. There were so many rumors, and if half of them were true, this film would have been spectacular. And some of them were, and maybe thankfully not all of them were. You know, Tom Cruise as Supreme Iron Man, fantastic idea on paper, but how would that fit in this film? You know, what they did with the movie is pretty solid, and my favorite part of this movie is Elizabeth Olsen. Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda is such fantastic casting, and again in this film it proves it yet again. Scarlet Witch, in my opinion, is one of the greatest villains in the MCU, and I'm not even joking. I love this character in this film. I haven't read any of the comic books, maybe that helps. Maybe some of you purists are not a fan of this portrayal. I loved it, especially coming off of Age of Ultron, Civil War, WandaVision. This is the logical next step, and I love that performance. I love that character. She is a mother through and through. And since I recently became a father, rewatching the film after my son was born, I was like, yes, of course, totally you would do that. What I love about the writing, what I appreciate it the second time around, is that Wanda is a mother in pain. And Doctor Strange is a good guy trying to reason with her. But he's not a father. He doesn't have children. So he can never fully relate to Wanda. He can never fully understand what Wanda's going through, what she's trying to do. And that's what kind of kicks him in the ass and sets Wanda on the path where she doesn't want to be reasonable anymore. And horror ensues. I like this film a lot. It's not perfect. It's not as good as No Way Home. And if you really want to get down to it, that's a little bit disappointing, but it's kind of unfair to this film in some ways, because No Way Home just was such a surprise and had such a fantastic idea. You know, it brought the multiverse to one location, and this film opts to go across the multiverse, and maybe that doesn't work as well in a film as bringing the multiverse to one cross point, let's say. Maybe that's what kind of made this film a bit more wonky, let's say. But I still really like the Steelbook. I still really like the film quite a bit, and I am actually excited to see what comes next. And this is like a regular ass 1-disc Blu-ray Steelbook, which who does it anymore? Ladies and gentlemen, that was it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Short and sweet, hopefully. Even though I've been recording for, let's see, 25 minutes. Let's edit this down to hopefully 22 minutes. Hopefully. I'm not quite sure I can manage that. Let's say 24 minutes. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Blu-ray Studios. You guys are awesome. And I promise you, my first ever legitimate movie review is coming out soon. Even though I am prone to give out movie reviews for the Blu-rays that I bought. So, it's going to be that. But it's going to be called movie review. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next episode of Blu-ray Series. Ciao. Elizabeth Olsen, you are gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. You should get your kids.